Al Jazeera Podcasts.
Today, we go inside one of the last remaining trauma wards in Haiti's capital.
We're on the verge of burnout sometimes. We're on the verge of depression sometimes. But also, there's a satisfying feeling of having helped.
In a city that feels ruled by chaos, what's the cost of putting your life on the line to save others? I'm Kevin Hirten, and this is The Take.
My name's John Holman. I'm the correspondent for Al Jazeera, and I'm based in Mexico City.
So, John, this is just an extremely difficult story to watch. In the documentary you reported for Fault Lines, you gained access to Tabarre Hospital, which is one of the very few hospitals still operating in Port-au-Prince. So let's start there.
The Tabarre Hospital is run by Doctors Without Borders. They gave us a rare opportunity to film here for a week. This is the story of the doctors and patients trying to survive in a country that's been torn apart.
The story begins with a woman and a man who were both sustained major injuries when armed gunmen stormed their home. Now, the Haitian capital has been on the brink for a while, almost completely under the thumb of armed groups. And the woman, Chrisman, says things have never been so bad.
Things have never been so bad. The situation has degenerated so much. It's everywhere. Everywhere is the same.
So before we talk about the hospital, first give us a sense of the country and the city that it operates in, and if you agree that things have never been so bad in Haiti.
Yeah, I think Chrisman's assessment is just about right. There's a few stark statistics that really give the idea of where the country and the capital are. There's more than 1 million people that are displaced in Haiti right now. So that's more than 1 in 10 Haitians that have had to flee their homes. Many of those people potentially homeless or living in really, really ramshackle sort of makeshift camps that have been set up there. More than half of Haitians are going hungry at the moment. That's the level of food security in the country. And there's also a significant number of children that are suffering from malnutrition.
Widespread gang violence and homelessness in Haiti means it's getting harder to find food. Nearly 2 million people are facing emergency conditions. The UN World Food Programme says without urgent humanitarian action, Haiti could be facing a famine.
There's pockets of actual famine in that country. So that's before you even get to the problem of the violence that's gripping especially the capital. The armed groups are also using rape as a weapon of war. So sexual assault has skyrocketed over the last couple of years also in the country. So I think what Chrisman's describing in terms of the situation getting worse is something that, is really borne out on the ground.
Yeah, and things in Haiti haven't been good for a while, but things really kicked off about 5 years ago. Why did that escalate things?
Yeah, in 2021, the country's president, Jovenel Moïse, got assassinated, and it left a real power vacuum in the country. There haven't actually been elections since then. So there's currently no elected government officials in the country. And into that power vacuum have stepped the armed groups. And they were sort of linked to political factions that controlled them and directed them. In some ways, they've sort of slipped the leash. They're doing things on their own. They're filling that vacuum of power. And now they control more than 80% of the country's capital. There's only a few little pockets of territory that the authorities hang on to. So that's really made this situation in which they've amassed so much power. And actually, the international community's tried to get involved to sort things out. There's been a Kenyan-led international force that's been sent into Haiti, but all that did was make these armed groups that were fighting among themselves think, well, we've got to come together to try and beat that force that's coming into the country. So they formed a coalition called Vivre Ensemble. So while they were fighting before, now they're more powerful than ever joining together. Who knows if that's going to last? But that's the sort of situation, the perfect storm at the moment that Haiti's in.
So you spent 6 days embedded with a Doctors Without Borders team that's operating in a city where 60% of medical facilities are now closed. So Just tell me about the process of actually getting into the hospital itself. How did you safely manage to access that facility in a city controlled by these armed groups?
I've been trying to ask for Al Jazeera for permission to go into Haiti for, I guess, 2 or 3 years. And the security situation is so bad that we'd always been told no. And this was our one opportunity. We were going to be under the protection of Doctors Without Borders. But just to get into the Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince, all of the access roads right now are taken by the armed groups. The airport's closed because a plane got shot at as it was landing. So the only way in is via a helicopter for most people. So it's just a dozen or so seats for a city of about 3 million people. So we got in that way and then went straight to the hospital. We then spent the 6 days in the hospital. We actually slept every night in sort of little mattresses, the plastic mattresses used for patients on the floor at one of the administrative buildings. Because the situation got so unsafe when we were there were gunfights we could hear outside of the hospital walls most days, that the Doctors Without Borders didn't want us going out of the hospital after 5 p.m. every night to the guest house that they have close by. And we were never done filming by then. So every night we were sleeping there.
Wow.
And then getting up to film the next day. So we got a very little taste of what the doctors, the medical staff in the hospital are living through every day and have been doing for years there.
What about the hospital itself? It seemed like a very modern facility, and at times it just felt like a normal medical procedural almost.
Yeah, the hospital itself, when you can see outside it, and I guess the documentary, we've only got a limited amount of time to show things, was actually just a collection of shipping containers with gravel pathways that Doctors Without Borders have put there because their whole, I guess, manifesto is that we're not here to be permanent. We hope that the authorities will take over. But obviously that hospital's been there for years now.
Wow.
They've managed to get the equipment that they need and the medical supplies they need because they're obviously a very well-organized international organization. Other hospitals in Port-au-Prince obviously haven't fared so well. It's really hard to get medical supplies, medical equipment into the capital right now because all of the roads are taken by the armed groups. A lot of places have had to close down also because of the pressure from the armed groups or from other security forces there in the capital and the country. Just to give you an example, the biggest public hospital in the capital, it was meant to reopen just before Christmas, and they had a reopening ceremony for it. And gunmen showed up. They killed a journalist or two, and they killed a policeman. Later, that hospital was set fire to. It's never reopened since. So that's what we're talking about in terms of most of the medical facilities in the capital. And that's why the documentary is called The Last Lifeline, because there's so few fully functioning medical facilities in the capital. Right. I think you have to, in your mind, put that with the fact that this is a place that's basically a war zone right now.
The doctors are under such pressure for so many reasons, but one of which is that it takes the patients so long to get to them. So by the time they're there, they're already sometimes past a point of no return.
Yeah, and I guess let's take the example of Chrisman and Jean-Claude, who turned into central people that we reported on in the documentary. That happened hours in the middle of the night. The gunmen broke into their house. They fled to the roof, and then they got shot, both of them. But they had to just lie there most of the night because no one could move them until daylight. And even when they moved them, Jean-Claude in the documentary is saying it just got put on the back of the motorbike with all of his sort of legs in a state and taken to the hospital. It was the only way. And that's not uncommon. The doctors were telling us that people could only be moved at certain times of the day, if they could be moved at all. And of course, when you've got a medical emergency, like someone being shot, every hour is important.
We'll have more with John after a break.
Within days of starting his second term, President Donald Trump issued pardons to more than 1,500 people who'd been charged or convicted of federal crimes. One of those was Ross Ulbricht, a young man serving a double life sentence for creating an online criminal marketplace called Silk Road, where users traded guns and drugs. Who is Ross Ulbricht? What does his pardoning tell us about where power really lies in the American justice system? Hear the full story on True Crime Reports.
So, John, Tabarre Hospital is the only specialized burn unit left in Haiti. Now, that's significant because of a young boy that you profile in the piece. Tell me about Alexandro and his mother.
Yeah, we met Alexandro and Jocelyn, his mum, when we were just, I guess, heading around the hospital and looking to meet people. And I guess it's probably the most heartbreaking story we've got in the finished film. The situation with Alexandro is that him and his mum had to flee their house, as so many Haitians, more than 1 million Haitians have had to do. They ended up in a displaced camp, and then that camp was attacked. It was set fire to. His mum said that he was in the middle of the fire, and she asked a man just to get him out, just to sort of bury him. She thought that he was already dead, and he wasn't. And fast forward now, and Alexandro, he's a really charming little boy, actually. We were around him just when he was playing, but his face, he looks different from other children. And she was saying that basically no one wants to play with him. He's just got one friend. That the hospital is an area that they feel loved, that they feel safe. And we were talking to one of the surgeons because he had to have an operation. That's why he come in. And I asked the surgeon, how many more of these operations? And she just said, all his life is going to need to keep operating on, because the skin is going to grow differently because of his injuries. I guess that for me underlined the importance of that hospital, because if that goes, which is always a possibility, then there's nothing there for him.
Yeah. Chrisman, who is a character in the story you mentioned earlier, she's getting her leg amputated. And she asks the question, one of the questions that I had watching this documentary and watching what's unfolding in Haiti, I don't understand why they shoot at everybody.
I think that's a really valid question, because we saw people coming into the hospital repeatedly with wounds, gunshot wounds in their hands, their arms, their legs. And in the case of Chrisman and Jean-Claude, Chrisman's a maid, Jean-Claude's a security guard. So these aren't people with riches that gunmen would want to come in and steal necessarily. And the answer we got from a lot of people was that the armed groups are looking to expand their territory. And the way to do that is to take houses, take entire roads of houses, take streets, to shoot at the people, to tell them that they can never come back. And after that, that's another place that the armed groups have under their control. So we think that's probably what happened in the case of Chrisman and Jean-Claude, and what's common right now in the capital.
So in the territories that are controlled by the armed groups, is there a relative calm there? Or is it when you're only on the edges, when you're in areas that want to be overtaken? If you're past that line, is there a sense of normalcy, but you're just under the governing structure of these armed groups?
I think it definitely varies depending on territory to territory. I think the facts bear out differently on the grounds. I think that from what we were told, the armed groups do have some interest in keeping things like hospitals open at the moment.
But you just told the story about how an armed group attacked the largest hospital in the capital. Why is an armed group targeting a hospital in the first place?
That answer I don't have for you.
Yeah.
That one I don't have for you. One of the questions that we asked during the documentary, why would they attack hospitals?
So, John, from what you said, it seems like the prospects for the government to regain control of the country, or even the capital itself, are pretty slim. So with that in mind, what happens to Tabarre's patients and staff if it were to fall into the hands of one of these armed groups?
The message from one of the doctors was that if Tabarre was going to fall, then basically what was going to be left, it is one of the last fully functioning hospitals in the country. I think that the hospital manager, especially, and maybe the doctors didn't want to talk about that so much because it's a country that every day patients and the doctors that are coming in, a lot of the doctors and medical staff as well are displaced, no? They're having to deal with attacks. One of the doctors was telling us, two projectiles came from my balcony just, the other day.
Yeah.
So they're already in a situation where, can you imagine that bubble of fear and panic as you're working? No one wants to be talking as well about, like, there's a possibility that this might end and we might not be able to provide treatment anymore. But if it were to end, then obviously it would be one of the last remaining pieces of the health system in Haiti just coming undone. The situation where that could happen and where Tabarre Hospital could end, perhaps, if the last remnants of the government that are holding on to those little pockets of territory, the few that it's got left, were to go away completely, perhaps that might mean that, not just talking about Doctors Without Borders, but many organizations in Haiti would feel that they couldn't be there.
Yeah.
There is a situation which already the government is not recognized as the overarching authority in the country. So organizations in general know that they have to at least talk to these warlords that are in control of these armed groups already. So it doesn't necessarily mean that everything would come to a halt in Haiti just because there wasn't a government.
There's a moment where Jean-Claude and Chrisman are lying in beds, hospital beds. They're recovering, both of them, leg wounds, lower body wounds. And one of them says to the other, I don't want to go back to where we were again. I'm not going back there. It does beg the question, though, where are they supposed to go? Both within Haiti and outside of the country. What are the options for these two?
Yeah, definitely. I think that Jean-Claude was telling us that I'll go to the Dominican Republic, which is next door to Haiti on that island that they share. The reality is the Dominican Republic is expelling Haitians like en masse. And anyway, just getting in and out of the capital, Port-au-Prince, the armed groups have the access roads. So it's tough, not just for Jean-Claude and Chrisman, but for anyone who's trying to escape that situation in Port-au-Prince and Haiti. Where do you go? For so many people, the answer has just been to these ramshackle makeshift camps for the displaced that have been set up just in the few pockets of governmental control. And that's as good as it gets. And I think that bleeds into the fact that more than half the population is suffering from hunger at that moment. The lack of jobs, the fact that people are having to move from where they've lived for a long time leads to these other things, no?
Yeah.
So it seems that just the options, we know at the moment now that the United States also is getting increasingly tough on Haitians. People are just running out of options in this city that's basically a war zone.
Yeah, so the patients, they want to leave. The doctors are willing to stay. You asked one doctor what he called the $1 million question, which is, why haven't you left? So what did he say to you?
He said, Dr. Kernazan, who we spent a while going around with, who's a really charismatic and sort of figure that helps to help hold the staff together there, it was partly about a job and partly about, well, this is where we're from, how are we going to, be able to fit in anywhere else? But also, he had a sense of duty. Like, if we go, who's going to take care of these people? And Dr. Zehra, who's the head of the burn unit, the other doctor that we talked to a lot, said the same thing. He said, I still don't regret staying, which struck me as just like, he's had his family in the United States for years now, his wife and children, and the only way he gets to see them is on a WhatsApp video call. And he has got a US visa, he could go. But these doctors feel a sense of duty towards the patients that they have to treat, and there are more of them coming in. Dr. Zehra said, before we're getting 2 or 3 gunshot wounds, wow, we can get 10 to 15 every day. I think there was a sense of sacrifice, a sense of duty, a sense of like, we're it. And if we're not here, then who's going to treat these people?
Well, it's an incredibly powerful film. John Holman, thank you for coming on The Take.
Cheers, Kevin.
And that's The Take. We really want to hear your thoughts on today's episode. What did you think of the discussion? What did you think of the topic? So drop your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll be monitoring them. We'll see you tomorrow.